In this week's video, it's time for Champagne Bubbles to get its first service. Stay tuned. Welcome back and/or to the channel. Today we are doing our very first service on our 2002 Kia Soul EX. And this time we're going to go through and kind of do what we did with Black Pearl. The only difference is it's a newer vehicle and this is the very first service. Now sometimes when they do a first oil change on a vehicle, they're going to put additional additives into the oil for the break-in process. So I didn't want to drain the oil as early as 3,000 miles. I wanted to give that oil as much time to help break in the motor as possible. Today we're going to go ahead and drain that oil out. We're going to do a full system check on it and just make sure that everything's good to go. We're going to check tires, we're going to check fluids, we're going to inspect the brakes. I don't foresee any problems, but we're just going to take a look on the inside and make sure everything's good. But let me get set up here and we'll start these processes. A couple of them I'm going to do at the same time just to kind of speed up because I have done other service videos. If I get a chance, I'm going to link the Black Pearl one down below in the description. That way you can go back and kind of see what maybe I did differently on that one because it had more miles and what I'm doing differently on this one because there's less miles. So let's get started. First thing I want to do is open up the hood. I'm just going to do a full inspection of all the other fluids. Let me bring you in closer. So the other fluids that we're going to be checking, you want to make sure that your brake reservoir is full. I've talked about this in other videos. There was one that I talked about more of the ABS system and the brake system. If I do get a chance, I will link that in the description down below. That one was for the two-wheel drive tank. One thing we're going to do is check our air filter. Now, I don't think I will need to put an air filter in this time, but I may need to do one next time. I know that the Kia Souls have a little bit of trouble with their air filters plugging very quickly. So it's a good thing to just double check it during an oil change because like I said, you won't probably open this again until the next oil change. The filter still looks good. I can still see light through it. There's a little bit of debris on this side, which is normal. And you can always take and get some of that debris out just by lightly tapping it on the ground. I get some of the embedded stuff out of there, and then you can just pick the rest out because it's already been pounded down. So something just like this. That'll be good enough for what we're going to do. Like I said, this filter, depending on how dirty it gets, we may change it next oil change. It might be the one after. We'll just keep an eye on them. Then you've got two clips, one on the back side of this air box and then one on the driver's side here. So one towards the rear, one towards the driver. Another thing you're going to check is your coolant level. Make sure that your coolant level is full. This one is this one looks full, but I'm going to shine a light down in there. Okay, we're down a little bit on coolant. And for this to be a brand new motor, we shouldn't have that. So I'm going to be looking at hoses now at this point, and I'm going to double check that oil. Let me grab a paper towel. Now I'm between low and full, which as it warms up, it may go more towards the full side. But it's still kind of a little concerning that it's showing low right now. And we've used a little bit of oil too, so we'll have to kind of look and see what's going on with the engine. Make sure there's no leaks when I get underneath. Next thing I'm going to check is my windshield washer fluid. It's looking a little low, so I'm going to go ahead and top it off. Okay, so now I got that topped off. We're good to go there. Like I said, this is your time to do your service, so you want to double check everything. Make sure that you don't have any fluids that are leaking or that you're losing a large amount of coolant. If you are starting to lose some, now is the time to double check everything, because even though this is a new vehicle, they could have installed a hose clamp wrong from the factory. There might be something going on that you're just not aware of. So now is a good time to just kind of double check everything. So I don't see anything leaking. Nothing external, so we're good there. Let's say at this point, we're going to go ahead and check tires and then get this vehicle up on the ramp so we can get this oil draining. So I'm going to reposition you here. And now with winter coming up, we're definitely going to want to make sure we get the right air pressure in the tires. And over the next probably couple weeks, I'm really going to watch them closely, because as the temperature drops, so will the air pressure in the tires, which means I may have to add more air as we go. But this is going to be a little loud, so I'll probably dumb down the volume here a little bit. And this little mini air compressor I'm using is a different one from what I had before. This one has an automatic shutoff on it. So what I'm trying to do is just see how accurate it is. I'm currently at 34 and I have it set close to 40. So I'm going to go ahead and bump it to 40. And then I'm going to pump this up a little more. We need about 36 to about 38 psi in each tire. And in order to get that, we're going to just keep double checking it here so we get it right. We're sitting at about 38. That's about the way I want these tires to go. So I'm going to go ahead and check the rest of the tires. It'll be the same process for every tire, so that won't change. While I'm here, we're just going to do a quick visual inspection of the brakes. And how we do that, we just look through the rotor here, make sure this isn't gouged or grooved. If you can get your hand back in here, you just want to make sure that there's plenty of pad left. I'm able to get my finger back behind and check the pad. There's plenty of pad left, so I'm not concerned there. In the rear, we've got rear disc, so it's the same process. If you had the drums, you wouldn't be able to do this visual inspection, but since we have the rear disc, it'll be the same inspection all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get these tires knocked out, and then I'm going to get my ramp set up, and I'll be back with you when I'm ready to drive up on the ramps. Okay, so now that I've got my tires aired up, and I did go close to 40 pounds on the tires, because like I said, I know winter's coming, the temperature's going to start dropping, so the air pressure in the tire is going to drop. Rather than me having to fill the tires up in another week or so, I decided to just put a little bit more in there. That way they'll drop as the temp drops. Well, let's get this thing started and get it up on the ramps. Okay, what I did was I actually let the oil circulate through the engine to get a little bit of heat in there, but not up all the way up to operating temp, because I don't want to be pulling hot oil. And we will need our catch pan. We will need our socket for our filter. We will also grab a 3/8 ratchet, a 3/8 extension that is about 4 inches long, and I'm going to bring a 6.14 millimeter, 15 millimeter, and a 16 millimeter. And the only reason I'm bringing so many is because I haven't done the oil change on this one yet. So I'm not sure exactly what size I'm going to need. Put this set this stuff here. I'm going to set you up on a little different system, and then we'll get underneath the vehicle. Okay, lastly, before you get underneath your vehicle, make sure you grab some paper towels. I've talked about this in the other oil change videos. Like I said, I'm going to link the one for the Black Pearl, since that is also a Kia Soul. But that's about the only one that I will link. And what I'm doing is I'm just doing a quick visual inspection to make sure I don't have anything that's leaking or any messes underneath here. So everything looks good. We'll go ahead and get the right size socket for this. I'm thinking this may be a 17. Yep. So I will need a 17 millimeter socket for the drain plug. Okay. The plug is on there very, very tight. Tighter than I care to have it. Yeah, that plug was way too tight. So we go back on, we're going to go a little bit softer, but not enough for it to actually come back out. But you do want to be a little bit more careful with it. Now, like I said, I did run this oil change to about 4,000, and it is pretty dark. Normally I don't like to run them to 4. Like I said, this one may have had additives from the factory, so the last thing I wanted to do was just pull it too early, and then the additives didn't stay in there long enough to help protect the engine. And this one, the oil will be a little bit more dirtier this time because we had to vary our RPMs when we bought a new vehicle. So we couldn't just drive at the same RPM all the time, so we had to vary them. And because when you do that, it's a much more spirited driving, and you build up a lot more deposits in the oil when you drive varying your speed like that. So next oil change probably won't be even as dirty as this one is. Now this is the first time I've been underneath this thing since we've gotten it, and we did have a rust proofing coating put on this vehicle to kind of help protect it. So at this point I'm just kind of checking everything over underneath, like what they sprayed, what they didn't. Just kind of looking it over, making sure everything's pretty well solid. Now their coating isn't like what we're doing on the Crimson 5.7. Their coating is a lot thinner. It's just a kind of a quick spray where they only really wrap the exhaust, and they don't get too carried away with how close they get when they overspray. Like on the plastic here, there's a bit of overspray from the undercoating that they installed. So they don't really take the time to pull plastics or pull their suspension apart like we are on the Crimson 5.7. But on this car, the suspension's not really exposed. You don't see a whole lot of it. So it isn't as necessary to get, that detailed with it, unless you were going to be doing something different or special with the vehicle. For us, this one's just kind of a daily driver, commuter slash road trip car for us because it's comfortable for both of us. So we wanted something that was well protected versus something that is more for show or more for look. And like I said, you can limit the torque on your ratchet by grabbing closer to the base of the ratchet. The farther out you go, the more pressure you're going to put down. If I moved out here, I could move this ratchet quite a bit more, but I could potentially over torque and strip out that nut. So we definitely don't want to do that. And if you question whether or not you got it tight, just flip it back to loosen and just see how much pressure you had to put down to get it back off. That's one way to double check it. But I like how much pressure that is right there to hold my drain plug in, so that's the way I'm going to do mine. So the next, I'm going to go for the filter. I will need to use the extension and the filter socket. And this part usually gets a little bit more messy because the filter is full of oil right now, so it is going to drain some out. If you can remove your socket before it comes all the way loose, then all you do is just spin your hand up in and twist it out. And if you're able to spin it fast enough, you can actually just drop it in the pan before it leaks all over you. But if not, it's going to leak. So I said you grab the paper towels. And some people buy some very large gloves. This is probably a lot better than the way I've been doing it. It's not good to have this oil get on your skin and on your hands and stuff. And I really should be wearing a pair of thicker gloves to kind of protect me from this oil. That may be something that I have to look at in the future. Right now I'm doing quite a few oil changes on different vehicles, and probably wouldn't hurt to have that. What I'm doing here is just getting some oil on the seal. Like I said, you don't want to put these on dry. I have talked about it in all my other oil change videos to make sure you get oil on that seal. Because if you accidentally cook that seal, you could potentially cause it to leak or fail. And then you're going to have a lot bigger issues when it comes time to do an oil change, because either you've leaked out quite a bit of oil, or you're going to run into a situation where you lose the oil filter and you lose all the oil in the engine as well. So I always put a little bit of oil on that filter. But we're getting close to being almost done. The last thing you want to do is tighten up that filter. Because like I said, you don't want that filter walking back off the vehicle. So I usually just grab at the base of my ratchet, turn that filter down where it feels pretty tight on my hand. And I cannot remove it with my one hand. I could probably get both hands in there, but it would be easier to take it off with a socket. All right, so we're done underneath. What I'm going to do is pull everything back out, get you set up on a different setup, and then we'll get the oil poured into this thing, and then we're almost done with this oil change. Okay, so now we got to pour in fresh oil. And I'm going to take oil that's fresh out of a jug, not stuff I've had sitting around. This is a brand new motor. I don't want to take a chance, so I'm going to pour the freshest oil I have in, and then I'll put the remainder in the jug. Now this is not the only vehicle that takes a 5W20. The Crimson 5.7 also takes 5W20. And everything else is either a 5W30 or a 10W30. And what I'm going to go for is 4 quarts. That'll be enough to start it and get it back down off the ramp. And I may have to add a touch more. The only thing is that Kia motors are kind of fussy, and they want you to leave it sit for about 20 minutes before you check that oil to make sure that the oil level's right after doing an oil change. And I got a feeling that this is not a common practice that most quick lube oil changes places do, because they don't want to take the 20 minutes to leave a vehicle sit there after an oil change just to double check the oil. So what they do is they get it close. If you don't take the time to check it, then you're going to be a little low on oil. Sometimes that's okay, sometimes it's not. I would rather make sure that during my oil changes everything is full where it needs to be right away than having to deal with, you know, I didn't have enough in there and now I'm starting to get a tick or a knock to the engine. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead, start the vehicle, back it off the ramps, get my ramps put away. I'm going to double check my oil level, make sure I'm good to go. And that will about complete it for this video. The only other thing you can do, and I've mentioned it, check your battery connections. Make sure you don't have any issues underneath there. But really, that's about the basics. Is just double check your fluids, make sure everything's full, and you're good to go. It's not anything to really stress over. It's just kind of going through each step and kind of double checking everything that you got. But that's about going to do it for today's video. I'll give you a little sneak peek for future videos here. We are going to do a little bit of a detailing project on this, just a quick cleanup, and we're going to finally get to that spirited test drive. That will be in the next video. But I'd like to say thank you for watching. Please hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one.